Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, this is Gary Wilson, your host for the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Welcome aboard, everybody. Good to have you again. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, 30 different channels, okay? Also, really important, if you haven't gone to the website recently, go to realestatewithgarywilson.com, click on the members area, okay? If you're a member on the left, you know what to do. You log in, get all your stuff. If you're not a member, go to the right, and guess what? For 30 days, you can log in and get all your stuff for free, okay? I mean, seriously, books, calculators, spreadsheets, over 300 recorded webinars, and everything you want to know about real estate investing, all kinds of good stuff there. And it's just a way to get your feet wet without any commitment, okay? So in any case, check that out. And in the meantime, I want to introduce to you Gustavo Munoz Castro, all the way from Mexico, just south of San Diego, one of my favorite stomping grounds. So I got family out there. I know the area well, so I was going to say I'm jealous, but now I'm in Florida, so I'm doing pretty good. I'm in Florida, no longer in California. a lot of people have done that. But Gustavo, welcome aboard, man. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you taking your valuable time to do this. So welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gary. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind first just kind of paint a picture of us for you, give us a little background. If you got any good juicy details, people always like to hear that stuff too. And then we'll get into some actual subject matter after that. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds great. So, Gustavo Munoz Castro, people call me Gus, for short. That's how people mostly know me. Originally from Mexico, born and raised in Mexico. I made it to the U.S. Via Microsoft, right? I Microsoft senior engineer with them. I worked at Microsoft for 10 years. It wasn't like a short stint. That's what I was trained to do. I'm a software engineer by training. But there was always something about, I always had the itch. I had the bug of doing something on my own and becoming an entrepreneur. But it took me a while. I was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to entrepreneurship and real estate. My wife is the one that kind of, got things started. She got licensed in real estate in 2008. As kind of the world was ending, right? For real estate. And, I got to see, we're in a crazy hot seller's market. I got to see a buyer's market, crazy hot buyer's market, back in the day, working part-time in real estate, working full-time in Microsoft. I got licensed in 2010 as a broker in Washington State. And I would help my wife out nights and weekends. It was just the two of us, 2-person team, or 1.5-person team, working, making deals done mostly with investors back in the day. They were picking up short sales, REOs, whatever the market offered back then. And then, I realized, Gary, that I was, that I had more fun. I had, more, there was more for me in that space, the real estate space, than in software and high tech. So after almost 10 years, full time in Microsoft, I turned in my badge summer of 2013. And I told my wife, I'm going to take 6 months off. I'm going to take 6 months, going to help you build your team. And then I'm going to go back to either Microsoft or Amazon or something else. And I was in Seattle at the time. And I'm gonna go back, right? I'm gonna take 6-month hiatus to help you out. And that happened in July 2013, and I haven't looked back. So we started a real estate team. We grew the team. Then I started this ISA company, Inside Sales for Real Estate, in 2015. A couple years after that. And now I'm doing that full time. So it's been definitely been a while. Now I've got as of this morning, 107 full-time employees working for me, working for investors, real estate agents, real estate teams all over the U.S. and Canada. So it's been a pretty wild ride. Nice.
So 107. These are 107 ISAs working for you, Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell you, let's. There's probably a lot of things we can touch on here. This is going to be good, but if we could, let's focus on the agent for a bit, because agents, for everybody listening, agents are who's serving you, helping you buy your properties, whether they're your own home or your investment properties. So wouldn't it be nice to know a little bit about how they do what they do? Because it actually is an entire industry, obviously, with a whole set of professional guidelines and education and tools and tactics. Now you get to see the inside of their business and might help you make better use of the agents you're working with. And by the way, speaking of agents, we do have certified investor agents now in 24 states. They're certified because we certify them ourselves. We're the ones who train them. We're investors, and we train these agents to work with us. So you can grab yourself one for free, and they have all the tools and strategies. They know how to identify the properties, analyze them, right, and negotiate with you. So they're not traditional agents. They're certified investor agents on the Global Investor Agent Team, GIA team. Check them out. Go to the website, like I told you, and you'll see them. They're in the community site. Okay. So Gus, back to this. This is going to be a great subject. So tell us a little bit about first, like what is an ISA for people who don't know, and what is it that they do, and then we can talk about some of the maybe a case study, some of the how and the techniques and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So ISA stands for Inside Sales Agent, and within the real estate context, we're talking about telemarketing for real estate, like someone that sits in the office all day working the phones, trying to get in touch with folks, whether they're doing usually one of two main activities. They're usually doing one of these two. They're doing outbound prospecting, like true cold call, like calling lists of motivated sellers, probates, tax liens, distressed properties, notice of default, whatever it is, or they're doing circle prospecting. A lot of agents, even in this market, crazy sellers market, they're turning to cold calling. Agents are doing anything they can to find properties in this market, right? That's one of the things they're jumping in. One of the things they're hiring us to do. Hey, help me cold call this neighborhood or these zip codes, these areas. That's one main area of business. The second one that we work on a ton now is nurturing and converting those inbound leads. The leads that come from Facebook, that come from Google pay-per-click, they come from in the real estate space, the retail real estate space, from Zillow, from Trulia, from Realtor.com. We respond to them, we convert them, and we convert them to appointment. We qualify them if they're really far out. We nurture them, and if they want to do something right away, we convert them to an appointment, convert them to a live transfer, so the agent can kind of take it from there and have the conversation with them and convert them to a signed client. That's the part of the process that we focus the most on. We go from either cold list prospect, or we go from inbound lead to appointment to signed buyer. That's kind of the part that we focus on and that we add the most value to.
Okay, let's focus on like a Facebook. So what's the sequence of steps? So I guess does the agent put something on Facebook? Do your company put something on Facebook, or like what does that look like?
Okay, yeah, no, great question. So the part of the process that we normally fit into is the agent is already running some kind of advertisement on Facebook, or they've hired like a marketing agency, or they're using a lot of agents right now with their brokerage. They have some kind of Facebook posting tool, so they're using the built-in tools for Facebook to run these ads. And we run hundreds of these campaigns for agents across the US and Canada. They all essentially run about the same 2 or 3 ads. It sounds like they could run anything. They don't really run anything, right? It's pretty straightforward. In a market like this, what do buyers want? Buyers want inventory, right? So they're advertising inventory any which way they can, right? If we have investors that are on Facebook, they're advertising solutions, cash offers, no questions asked, close in 3 days, kind of an offer. So for investors, it's actually very narrow for investors. Agents, you can have maybe 2 or 3 types of ads, but at the end of the day, you want to advertise what people want. You have to promote access to something really valuable. For buyers, that's going to be any kind of inventory. And for the potential motivated sellers, it's cash, it's solutions, it's close immediately as is condition, no questions asked. So given that those are the marketing tools, the ads, the way people come into the pipeline, come into the funnel, that's where we come in, right? That's where like a traditional ISA, inside sales agent, comes in. Whoever comes in through those ads, through that advertising, they reach out to them. That's their job, to be the first point of contact. They're texting them immediately. They're calling them as soon as possible, and they want to get them on the phone and they want to have that conversation. That's where we're between the lead coming in and the agent meeting with them face to face.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So now the folks you have, you said, I think there's 107 or so, over 100. I remember that, right?
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
Okay. Are they, is it mostly, as you said, US and Canada. So what areas, what are some of the areas of focus? Because I know, like on my team, we've got a lot of agents in Florida, and we got a bunch in California, and it's scattered after that. But of course, those are 2 very populated states. Of course, those are the 2 states everybody wants to be, because the beaches and the sunshine.
Yeah.
But where are all your agents? Are there areas of expertise or focus in particular, geographically speaking? Or
Yeah, well, it's those two states are in the top because they're just the largest states with the largest amount of agents. Texas is very close behind that, and then you see clusters, right? You see clusters of high growth. Colorado, Colorado Springs, Denver area. You're going to see Austin, Texas, Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas. Texas is on fire. So many people moving to Texas. Atlanta, Georgia, same kind of situation. A lot of folks moving in there. A lot of tons of new construction, tons of resale. I would say Tennessee, like a Chattanooga, Memphis, Nashville area. I think those places stand out because even though some of those aren't huge states, they don't have huge populations. You see a lot of folks doing online advertising, doing all kinds of prospecting because there's so much movement in the market for retail. So Tennessee is an interesting case. You're going to get a ton of retail and a ton of investors. It's kind of weird, right? And it's usually one or the other. But yeah, you see a little bit of both. Folks wanting to diversify there. I'd say those are the ones that jump out the most, other than the typical California and Florida.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Tennessee. It's popping up more and more and more. People are moving there, and they're not even moving even to just like Nashville's awesome, obviously, but they're even moving to places like Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, places that people have only heard of in songs, and now they're like, and you should see the prices, Yeah. So amazing. Well, let's talk about some of the focus areas, like for example, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. A lot of people are buying second homes there. It's just a beautiful country, or you got rivers and streams and lakes and evergreens everywhere and mountains and hills. And but for the ISAs, do you have ISAs that some might focus on vacation homes and others might focus on flipping properties, others might focus on landlords buying rentals, maybe some traditional, because in traditional you got move-up buyers, you got first-time home buyers, you got downsizers. But how do you are you able to place people based on niches like that? How does that work with the ISAs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because you said it right. The riches are in the niches, as they say. So a lot of real estate agents, they're all real estate agents, but real estate takes a lot of different forms, right? So right now, we work with folks that focus on retirement homes. I mean, there's a niche in real estate that focuses on retirement homes. People moving into retirement homes. They probably have a home to sell, right? They need help with relocation. There's a whole, that's probably one of the newest niches that, we've helped folks out, helping to find potential sellers where their destination is assisted living or some kind of a retirement community, right? So we even focus on that, but I think probably the main ones that we tend to focus on are typical retail buyers, retail real estate. New construction is huge right now because there is no other inventory in a lot of these markets. There's only new construction. Focusing a lot on that. And on the investor side, I would say we probably also see some diversity. We work with a lot of wholesalers, folks that want to do wholesaling with fixers and flippers, and buy and hold investors. I think the common thread for all of these teams, Gary, is that they've achieved the scale where they want to add leverage to their organization. They want to add leverage to their team. And it makes sense to them to hire a part-time or a full-time person just to fulfill that job. But when a new client comes into us, right, we got to make sure that we can offer what they need. We need to make sure that we can offer what they want and that they have appropriate expectations, right? You never want to get a client jumping in, whether they're an investor or an agent that wants to see results within the next 30 days or else, right? It's not going to work. It's not going to be a good fit. We're not going to be able to meet their need. So we want to make sure that the expectations are set the right way, that even though it's a retirement community or it's a new construction project or it's a traditional, retail and resale, that at the end of the day, what's the lead source? What's their expectation? And can we meet that? So as long as we can understand that part of it, we can adapt to that. We have an onboarding process. We have an onboarding management team that kind of onboards the campaigns, drills down into like lead sources and what they expect, what we can deliver on. There's a whole process. That's a really important part of the process because our ISAs, They're trained in real estate, right? They understand that, but they might not be trained in retirement communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to add the right person, like they can learn those things, right? And we do the hiring, selection, and training and management of these folks for them. But there is a part they're always going to learn when they're in the campaign. And that's why those first 30 days of any campaign are so important, because that's where that knowledge transfer and that learning takes place.
Yeah. Okay. Now the campaigns, so I guess you would have different campaigns for different purposes. Is it possible, like, I just wondering, what's the flexibility, or in other words, you have good top producing teams, they need an ISA or they need another ISA. Do they generally provide the marketing campaigns, or is that something you can do yourself? Do you have any marketing campaigns that you're particularly proud of, or something that's, really unique? I mean, not that you want to spill all the beans, but maybe like an example or even a case study,
Yeah. So we provide some case studies, right? We'll interview our clients, and we'll usually like publish those kinds of videos, and it's up to them how much they want to share. So, and you know how, real estate agents and investors are. Some of them keep the information really, really close, and they're like, okay, maybe not. And some folks are very comfortable talking about that kind of thing. So from the folks that have shared those kind of things, we have a lot of knowledge that we can share with other clients. That some of our clients, they're very clear with us, like, hey, this is a non-disclosure. You cannot talk about anything that I'm doing, and we 100%, respect that. And so as long as it's something that's out of the open, that they've talked about publicly, we can absolutely share those experiences and tell folks, hey, for example, outbound prospecting, circle prospecting, calling. It's essentially calling the phone book. That's what circle prospecting is. You pick a point on the map, and you draw a circle. You're going to call around that area because it's a high value area because of whatever. We know anecdotally that there are parts of the country where it's very difficult to get that kind of prospecting to work, like a Southern California, like a Metro Bay Area, like a Manhattan, New York, right? So and even that, there are campaigns that run in those areas, right? Because even though the conversion rate is so low, for some campaigns and some clients, the conversion still makes sense. Like we were talking about earlier about Southern California, La Jolla area. Someone will, the price point makes so much sense. If they can get one conversion a month, or if they can get not even a conversion, a solid lead in that market per month, far outweighs the expense of having someone calling the phone book for them all day. So it does depend on kind of what the goal is. But we do try to match them with a realistic expectation, because we know one kind of prospecting and campaign is like a cold calling prospecting campaign. That is the lowest converting activity you're going to find. It's just a numbers game. You dial so many people, you talk to so many people, and you're going to get one or two qualified leads every day, every couple days, every week, right? So it just kind of depends what those numbers look like. That versus like an inbound paid advertising campaign, like a Facebook, like a Google pay-per-click, like a Zillow. That the conversion rate is much higher, like 10 times higher, 20 times higher. And those leads are priced appropriately, right? They're not going to be like a cold list. They're going to be more expensive. Like the highest converting lead that we have is probably the Zillow.com, Realtor.com type of lead. Or on the investor side, a pay-per-click type of lead. Someone that's searching on Google for, hey, how can I get, someone that buys ugly houses, someone that can get me cash fast for my property, who can buy a home, right? No questions asked, as is condition. Those are going to be more expensive kind of leads. They also convert better. That's why they're kind of priced appropriately. So whenever someone comes in and wants help with that, we can suggest and we can share our experience with those kinds of lead sources just to make sure we're all aligned. We don't do the work for them. We don't do the advertising. We don't do the marketing for them. But we always want to make sure that it ties in, because it matters. Where you get the leads from, where you get the lists from, is one of the most important factors in whether you're going to be successful in the right time frame or not.
Yeah, I appreciate that, which makes me think of something else. So, like in the real estate world, you've got individual solo agents, you've got small teams, you've got big teams which are localized, and you got teams like mine where we're literally, we're a national size team. But when is it right? When's the right time for an agent to consider bringing on an ISA like this, someone who's professionally trained and just focuses on that one role? Because I know a lot of agents, once they learn the business and they can get busy, make a lot of money, then they struggle with how do they, get their life back, because they're totally into it. They're doing everything from chief bottle washer to toilet bowl cleaner. And I always tell them, I say, you got to start building a business, like have a virtual assistant at a minimum, pretty quickly. But what are your thoughts on that? When is the right time for an agent, and then maybe then to talk about a team after that to bring in an ISA?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, and I think this is really similar whether you're an investor or whether you're an agent. I think your number one hire is an administrative assistant, right? That's really the usually the activities that weigh you down, that don't allow you to do lead generation, lead conversion. Like the highest value activities for your business, if it's real estate, is about setting appointments, taking appointments, setting appointments, taking appointments. That's really the lifeblood of your business. If you don't have any kind of focus on how many appointments are you setting a day and how many appointments are actually taking a day, you're not going to have a business, or you're going to have or something even worse, the roller coaster. You've got business one month and you've got no income the next month. So, and that's usually what drives a lot of people away from real estate, right? Because they can be easily caught up in that roller coaster. The only way to get off that roller coaster is to have some kind of consistent lead generation and lead conversion activities, whether you do that. And again, I'm not here to preach about that. I mean, if you do it on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, but you need to do it regularly, right? Otherwise, you're never going to get yourself a chance to get off that roller coaster. For me, your first hire is not lead generation focused. Your first hire is administrative focused, because that's going to prove that you have enough lead generation and lead conversion skills to pay them, right? Not just pay yourself, but pay an employee, like someone working for you. And that can be virtual, that can be in-house, I guess, whatever each person is kind of comfortable with. I've seen both work out really, really well. And it's all about defining the role for them, like being really clear, doing it with them before you can't abdicate that role. You've got to actually delegate, train, follow up, teach, train, coach, and before you can actually truly hand it off. And then you're doubling down on your lead generation and your lead conversion. That's great. For me, I think an ISA on a typical real estate team is probably going to be around maybe third, maybe fourth person you're adding to the team, because a buyer's agent is probably more urgent for you at that point, right? If you're generating enough buyer activity, which is the easiest, most efficient kind of lead to generate online by far. If you're talking about online leads, online lead generation, buyers are where it's at. That buyers are the most efficient, most cost-effective kind of lead to generate. And, depending on the market, 5%, maybe 10% of those leads will have something to sell, like a property to sell. I still think that buyer lead gen is the best seller lead gen in my, online, in my opinion. So that is probably where you want to add some leverage on the buyer side. And once you've got that administrative assistant, when you've got someone helping you on the buy side, whether it's a showing assistant or a true buyer's agent, then it's time to add the ISA. Why? Because at that point, you have the budget to add someone in there. You've got lead flow already, right? You cannot hire an ISA and have barely subsistence level lead flow and expect the ISA to solve your problem. It's a recipe for you're going to run out of runway. You're not going to give the campaign enough time to pick up steam and to deliver.
Yeah. Okay. Now, by the way, I know I said we want to focus on the agents on this one, but you mentioned earlier, having ISAs for investors too. Can you give an example of how and why an investor might want to have an ISA?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And on the investors, I'd say something like 90% of what we do for investors is not the inbound lead conversion and lead and appointment setting. It's the prospecting piece of it, right? Investors tend to be much more focused on prospecting, and they have a huge advantage over the agents on this, which actually there's no reason they should, but they do. In practice, this just happens. Investors invest a lot of money in their lists. They have much, much, much higher quality lists than the agents have. Agents can sometimes want to carpet bomb the whole neighborhood. Investors hardly ever take that approach. They're going to generate a list of homes with a certain, certain bedroom, certain bathroom, certain size, certain equity in the property, certain age of the owner, certain maybe a distressed kind of situation. They layer all of these different kinds of requirements on these lists, and instead of having 30,000 phone calls to make in the next 30 days, they've got maybe 1,200 phone calls to make in the next 30 days. And they can call them once, twice, 10 times, and they're going to have more success with that 1,200 person list typically than someone that has 30,000. Because with 30,000, you're lucky if you call that person once in the next 6 months, one time. If you have a list of 1,200, You're going to call them. You're going to text them. You can mail them. You can do a pop buy. There's a lot of things you can do with a smaller list, more focused list. And the conversion rate is not even close. You're going to convert a lot of those into deals. And a lot of these really hot investor markets like the Austin, Texas, the Chattanoogas, someone's going to get that deal. It might not be you, but those lists are going to move, right? There's so much demand for those properties at that price point that if the seller qualifies and the property qualifies, that's another thing. So as an ISA, that's different with investors too. With retail real estate, you're just qualifying the lead. You're making sure the lead their needs are clear, their timeline makes sense, and they're motivated and they're good to go. For sellers, there's an additional piece to that. You've got the seller that wants to sell, that's qualified, has a reason, has a certain motivation, and their property has to qualify. Not every investor can take every deal, and most investors, and I'm not even sure what this is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Gary. But they do investing and they typically ignore the retail stuff. I mean, I see investors that just toss it. They're not even going to follow up with it. It's so competitive right now. They're not even going to follow up with a retail seller. They're like, I'm not even going to hand it off. The agent's not going to follow up with them. It's going to be another 5-person, competition for that listing. Let me focus on what I know best, which is the motivated seller. Yeah,
it's interesting. In the investor world, what we're finding here just in the last few months, the investors are hanging on to the multifamily properties. They're not selling them, but they are selling their singles, the ones that were used for rentals, single detached, the townhome, condo. They're starting to let those go because they feel like, kind of like we do, we're at or near the top of the market. They want to take their profit now as opposed to waiting and taking a chance. So what's interesting is we noticed that when we started getting more buyers who were saying, well, we want to buy something where our lease is ending and our owner is going to sell. So we started a whole campaign just going to the sellers. So this now is a great idea for investors to approach other investors who want to sell their singles, and could be a good deal. I don't know, but you're right. They're not going to go after the retail ones because the market is such a seller's market, and it's so much more competitive. Just let the regular realtors have those and beat themselves up. I mean, we have one property in Pensacola, Florida. The owner stopped receiving offers after the 122nd offer. So just stop the madness.
Holy cow! Yeah, I mean, well, I hadn't heard that before, but I'd heard in the market that I know the best, which is Seattle, in the 50s and 60s. It was not an adequately priced property. Obviously, they pulled in way too many offers. But that's the kind of demand you can generate in this kind of market.
Yeah, exactly right. And then people are, buyers are waiving appraisal contingencies. They're going to get them appraised, but if the appraisal doesn't come in as high as the sales price, the buyer has to make up the difference. They're waiving inspections. It's just absolutely insane. So what we're telling our team members is, you're going to get the buyers automatically, obviously. Focus on going under the radar screen and get the listings. Find the people that need to or want to sell and be the first one there, and that's what's unearthing the listings for us, But it's whole interesting concept about investors having their own ISA. If you got a system, if you got to be running a business, if you're running or investing like a business, it makes sense, obviously, So I know when I was doing first all I did was invest. I didn't even have a broker's license. And I did build a team out of it, and I had somebody who did the phone calling. We didn't even call them ISAs. It just was like, well, that was the next hire. Then I got in the brokerage and I realized, well, there's a little bit of a model there to follow too, but it was an old archaic model. So we just basically improved on that and called it an investor agent model. So we have showing agents who open doors for a fee instead of giving them a piece of the commission, right? We only do that with investor listings, though. We don't do that with traditional real estate because a buyer could look at 30 houses before they buy one, whereas with investors, on average, we look at 6 before we buy one, But have you ever seen people team up, like investors and agents team up and maybe share an ISA? Or I don't know if I'm opening up a can of worms here, but it's just something that came to me as you were talking,
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen them shared, in different scenarios. Like, for example, loan officer and agent is a very typical kind of an ISA sharing model, right? Loan officer comes in, agent comes in. They've got different systems, different kinds of lists, and they're going to split the time, or they're going to split days. You get this day, I get that day. So to make sure they're servicing both of them, right? So I think that's probably the most common one that I've seen split. I haven't seen the agent and investor, split model. Someone needs to step up and try that out, right? Because if they're both focused on finding motivated sellers, that can work, and I think it can work really, really well. Because whatever you do the most, you get the best at. So I love it when the two partners sharing the ISA, they're aligned. They're both working buyer leads. They're both working or prospecting for sellers. And as long as we get that kind of synergy, I think it can be really successful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like to keep going, but I see we're getting close on time here. It went fast. I kind of knew this was going to happen because this was a unique subject. We don't really cover it much. And I think that we're getting a lot of agents on the podcast, and maybe we should do more of this. But so Gustavo, I want to thank you for taking your valuable time to do this. I know you're busy with 107 ISAs. I'm pretty sure you're a busy guy, and successful people are busy. And for everybody listening, I know I speak for a lot of them when I say thank you for doing this. But is there anything you can share with them, Gus? How can these guys get a hold of you? Is there a website, email, a free report? How can we best get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely. So the best way to get a hold of me is probably, two places. Number one, my website, PowerISA.com altogether. PowerISA.com is a great way to reach out to us. And also on Facebook. Facebook's a great way, look me up. You don't have to look up my whole name because that can be kind of hard. But PowerISA on Facebook, I'll pop up there, and we have a free Facebook group I can send you the link to, Gary. Post and jump in. That's a free Facebook group that we have that just talks about this, marketing for real estate, right? Different topics about the ads, the marketing pieces, the conversion challenge, everything about being successful. And we have, and within that group, I always try to talk to investors and agents that are just doing a great job and kind of share some of those secrets.
Cool. So PowerISA.com, guys, keep that in mind and look it up. Take Gus up on his offer there. If everybody listening, again, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Massive Passive Cash Flow Podcast. It's on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, 30 different channels. Take your pick. And then definitely go to the website, realestatewithgarywilson.com. Go to them, click on members area. If you're not a member, go to the right, log in, get it for free. And more importantly, for everybody, make sure you get yourself a certified investor agent. They're called global investor agents. They're on a team, national team, and they know how to identify, analyze, and hopefully negotiate investor properties. They don't just point out the pretty carpet. They know what they're doing. We train them, and oftentimes they're investors themselves. Okay, valuable asset. And and Gus and for everybody, God bless you and your families. You have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you on the next podcast. Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.